There was this woman named Rabia. So one day she stands to pray. And Sufis are interesting in the sense that they want their prayers to contain a good amount of intense emotions. They want to stand, pray, weep, be in union with whatever that's out there. So she stands expecting that she's going to be melting, crying, having this really intimate moment with herself and God. And she stands and she's very disappointed because she's not feeling anything. And so she just kind of stands and says to this imaginary thing called God that my heart is not alive. There are two options. I can either give you a prayer that means absolutely nothing. My mouth will move, but my mind will not think about what my tongue is saying. And my heart will not feel what my tongue is saying. If you want, I can say that. If on the other hand, she says to God, you want a prayer that has reflection, that has spirit in it, you have to give me that heart because I can't do it on my own. I think when you're dealing with very, very proficient, creative people, and the way you become proficient is that you do something over and over and over and over again until it becomes part of you. Sometimes I haven't read a book, I don't know for how long, and because of my involvement with the shed and the deck, I haven't even written. I'm far too exhausted to put my body down on the chair and focus on writing for more than maybe 5 or 10 seconds. Also, writing is difficult. So sometimes when I head to the office, I say to myself, okay, Amir, look, you haven't read a book in a couple of decades. You haven't written anything in like 2, 3, 4, 5 months. You haven't even thought about anything significant. What the hell are you going to do when you get to the class? But my investment goes way back, which is I was with Hussein for a number of years. I read a lot of books. I wrote a lot. I thought a lot. And it's like an art that even if you don't practice, you're not going to lose it. It is part of me. So if you happen to be very proficient, the realities of life and this other part of you that you categorize as being creative, they live kind of together harmoniously. If you happen to be someone like Rabia, you've been a Sufi woman for about 20 years, 30 years, you've fasted, you've prayed, you've moved through inspiration, it's okay if you have a day off or 2 days off. That's not going to do much to you. There was a guy named Muhammad Ghazali. Ghazali was a theologian. And he would go around sometimes just buy books because he loved to read books. So one day he has all these books being carried in this caravan. It's this group of thieves come to steal everything that he owns, and he looks at them and says, please take everything but not my books, because all of my wisdom lives inside the books. And the chief of the thieves looks at him and says, so you're telling me that your wisdom is something that can be stolen? He says, yes. He says, then shame on you. Wisdom is something that lives inside you. No one can ever take it from you. And supposedly, his life completely changes. From that point on, he goes and he searches for the sort of knowledge or wisdom that can be found within as opposed to without. And I think when you become someone like him, you will never lose your creativity, even being in the midst of the hustle and bustle of life. It's only when you're not proficient and you go into the world, and the world has a tendency of just destroying whatever creativity you have inside. But if you are really good, when you say creativity, sometimes for all of us here, it's spontaneous. You're sitting and you're inspired to write a poem. That's creative. There is nothing wrong with that. But then you have the creativity of Shakespeare. You have the creativity of T.S. Eliot. These are like professionals. A professional is not going to lose his or her talent, the ability to express who and what they are, express what they've observed about life or about themselves. It is only those who are not very proficient, who are governed by inspiration, that they can't find a happy medium, that they live in conflict. Once something has found a home inside, something has made a home inside, you can run away from it. You can try to forget about it, but eventually you'll go back. The only conflict that you will suffer is, why didn't I go back home sooner or earlier? Why did I have to do all that stuff? When there is an intense amount of creativity inside you, your inner world is really quite chaotic. It's chaotic, it's authentic, it's passionate, it's honest, it's sincere. It's not governed by the laws of gravity. It's not governed by society. It's just all oozing from your inside. Then your alarm rings and it's 9 o'clock and you have to go to Kaiser. And you sit behind the table and punch in numbers. You say, what the hell is this? And I think that's a tragedy. I think if you can somehow find a way to just be in that creative space, and instead of making $100,000 a year, just make $50,000, learn how to live with that amount. But the idea, something we talked about before, the idea that, you can be creative for 5 hours and then you can go sit behind your table and punch in numbers for 10 hours and come home being relatively sane. You can only be sane if you forget this other part of you. I think when you're young and you have a lot of passion inside you, you can't but be in conflict. You're young and you want to go out there and fly, and the world has only one function, which is to beat you up. Whether it's your parents or your boyfriend or whoever maybe it doesn't really matter. Chaos doesn't know stability. Gaia can be stable because she's grounded. She doesn't care whether you urinate on Gaia or plant flowers. It takes both of them the same way. Uranus, on the other hand, is very, very different. Doesn't want to come down, doesn't want to get filth. Just want to, be the sky and just look down and make all these judgments about how ridiculous the earth is, people who walk on earth. When you're young, it's very difficult to occupy the adult world because it is dry, it's boring, it's dead. And so when you go to, say, a Buddhist workshop and they say, well, the happy medium, we take a philosophy class and they're talking about Aristotle's the golden mean, that don't be an extremist. When you're young, it's stupid. It won't work. You just have to just wait and wait and wait until you either end up in the forest or you end up in the world. The difference between Jesus and Buddha and their mothers is that the mother of the Buddha was told that, listen, your son will either be worldly or he will be otherworldly, but he has a choice. That's not what God told me. There is no this worldly, physical worldly for Jesus. He's just made for the other world. And he comes to this world only to baptize it. And he doesn't have much of an option. Most of us are not as lucky. We have options, and those options create a good amount of conflict. But I'm also, a little temperamentally, I'm somewhat an extremist. It's black and white for me. A happy medium doesn't exist for me. And it may be because, I'm just breathing that way. Someone, for example, tells me, can you tell me about Plato? I pay attention to the body language. And just in case I find that body language a little dismissive, I won't say anything about it. I just be quiet. Just wait for them. Wait to see if they're going to ask